Judkins, aka Jeff Judkins, needs to join the program. Just it's so often. We love Jeff Judkins. Lots to talk about with him. Horses and summer workouts and GIRLDAD camp and Danny Ainge. And here's that conversation earlier today with Jeff on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. Juddy, how we doing? How's the summer going?
Summer's going great, Jerem. It's ready to go. You know, hot. It's getting hot. Now the girls are back, ready to practice. It's kind of dead there for a while, but now it's starting to live up a little bit, and we're excited for this season.
Okay, we'll talk about the team, but there's a few things to go over with you and you know, GIRLDAD camp, which I'm very excited about. I'm attending myself with my daughter Benna in August. That'd be awesome. First, I want to point out to people something we've seen in your office. What's behind you is one of the greatest pieces of memorabilia I have ever seen in my life. The top 50 NBA players, and it's signed by all of them, right?
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think there's only been I think there's 400 of them made, and so I think I'm very fortunate to be able to have that. A really good friend gave it to me, knew how much it would mean to me to have it in my office, and it's something that when recruits come in and people, anybody comes in and checks out BYU's office where I'm working, they always look at that and go, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And I look at it and I think of a lot of guys I played against in my career and you know, played with. So it brings a lot of great memories.
How many buckets did you get on those guys?
Not very many, or I'd be on that board one night. But you know, I played with you know, Larry, and what a great player, and Adrian Dantley's on it. I played with him, and Dave Cowens and John Havlicek. You know, those are some of the guys that I played with. And
hold up, you played with Havlicek? I didn't think you were that
well. No, Havlicek retired right when I came, and Havlicek used to work out with us all the time. So you know, he'd come and play and practice when he retired, and so it was kind of fun to be able to do that. He was kind of my idol when I was a young boy.
That's pretty cool. One of the iconic you know, plays in NBA history is Havlicek steals the ball, you know, and he gives it to Kuzi, and yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny Most was a funny guy. You know, his voice, you'd never picture how he looks with his voice, but you know, he was a really diehard Celtic guy, and he loved basketball. He loved the players, and I think he showed a lot of enthusiasm when he announced.
Okay, obviously, let's talk Celtics. Danny Ainge, you know, retires as GM of the Celtics. What a run he had, including an NBA title, Executive of the Year in 2008 and then 2009. What are your thoughts on Danny Ainge and what he did with the Celtics?
Well, I think he really changed a lot of things and made the Celtics where they were in the 80s and the 70s. Of course, when I got there, the 70s, they won a couple titles in the 70s, and then my last year at the Celtics, we got into the Eastern Finals and ended up losing to Philadelphia. And then from that point on, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and the gang, they just took over and were so dominating. And then they had a little fall, and a lot of people don't realize they lost two of the first-round draft picks. They lost Baez, who people say could have been one of the greatest players ever, and then Reggie. I'm trying to think. The guard
Reggie Lewis.
Yeah, remember he had some heart problems and he passed away. He was a good player. So Danny did a great job of getting that franchise turned around so quickly. And I think if they wouldn't have had some injuries here and there, he might have won a couple titles, being the GM. And of course, he put the team with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and those guys together. That was quite a really good team. And so, it's sad to see him not do it, because you can always look at him and say, hey, he's part of BYU and he's part of everything. But I also understand he's been doing it for a long time. It's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And so I'm going to see if I can get him to come help us as maybe an ops or something.
That would be nice. I'm hoping your budget's a little bigger next year to accommodate Danny.
I think I'll be able to get some money raised to maybe help pay him, maybe.
Also, Danny was quoted as saying, I don't really want to work that hard, but I still want to have a job. So, you know, we all aspire to that kind of level. Do you think you have an equal to or better jump shot right now than Danny Ainge?
Boy, that would be a good challenge. I would say it'd be really close. I don't know if he's shooting as much as maybe as me. So I would say maybe I have a slight edge because I'm shooting more. He's more in a tie and a suit and in the office, maybe. But that would be a great challenge. I know we had some great battles in college when he was a freshman and I was a senior. And, you know, and then, of course, when we played I played him in a pro-am a couple times. That was a lot of fun.
We're talking to Shooter McJudkins. He says he's a better shooter than Danny Ainge here on BYU Sports Nation. How are the horses? And remind people, how many horses do you have?
I have 6 horses. I lost one this winter. So I didn't replace it. I think 6 enough, but that's something that I really enjoy. I enjoy getting and riding and just kind of getting away and letting things just kind of go, I guess, you know. And I've had a lot of players like, you know, that I've coached that enjoy doing it. In fact, you know, as we were talking, trying to get Andre Miller was going to come on today with me, but he must be doing something else. But he loves to do something, you know, ride horses.
Yeah, if Andre Miller was on BYU Sports Nation, that'd be a first. So we look forward to that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll work on that, Jeremy. We'll work on it.
Okay, Girl Dad Camp, August 6th through the 8th. People can still sign up, I believe, BYUSportsCamps.com. This is the first year of this, the inaugural BYU Girl Dad Camp. I'm going with my 8-year-old daughter, Venna. I cannot wait. Tell people about what can we expect, and mainly me. I want to know what I've signed up for.
Well, I think, first of all, it's a great opportunity for a daughter and their father to be able to do something together and do something maybe not so much like camping or some other activities that the father and daughter seem to get all the time. It's going to be a camp that they do several activities, a lot of fun games and different things to, I think, compete against each other, but also compete against some other fathers and daughters. I think we're going to have the spiritual part of it where we're having a fireside. We're having some really good speakers. I'm not going to say who the speakers are because I want it to be a surprise, but we're going to do that. We're going to just have, you know, go and eat together, just do a lot of things together as a father and a daughter. And I think it just gives a great opportunity for not just the father to be able to have time with his daughter, but for the daughter to be able to get to know their father probably in a lot of different ways. I can't wait to see the competition and see the competitiveness of what happens with these fathers. I know I did one father and son camp with Coach Majerus many years, and we had about 10 fathers pull their groin, hurt their knee, sprain an ankle. It was pretty interesting, but this won't be as much like that. But I'm really excited about it. This is our first year, and we're doing it with Heather and
Diligent.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to get to know them too, and just kind of put this thing together. We just really thought this would be a great opportunity for a lot of people that are BYU fans who want to have a great camp.
Yeah, I cannot wait. August 6th through the 8th. Go to BYUSportsCamps.com for more information and to sign up. Okay, let's talk about the team. You guys have summer workouts right now. Obviously, a very talented team coming back for your squad. What's it like right now as you try and build on what you did last year, which was get to the WCC title game, Gonzaga won on a buzzer beater, crazy moment. You go to the NCAA tournament, you win a game. How can you get better? What are you up to with this group?
Well, you know, I think we scratched the surface last year, and of course 2 years before that we beat Auburn, then we ended up losing to Stanford, and then we didn't do a year, we didn't go, which hurt. And then last year, really positive. I mean, I thought we played well at the end, and the Arizona game was, you know, we played them as good as anybody. We did the best job on their guard. Thought Maria did an outstanding defensive job on her. But you know, this team's ready to go. I think we definitely want to do better than we did last year, and we want to be able to win a conference championship outright. We want to do well in the tournament, and hopefully the NCAA tournament just realize that when you get there, it's just a little bit, and you just work a little bit harder, and things can really happen for you, like what it did for Arizona. Who knows? That could have been us. If we'd have beaten Arizona, we could have beaten Texas A&M and done the same thing. So we got everybody back. 2 players are not returning, but everybody else is back. And then we have 6 new freshmen that are coming in that we signed. And so the challenge is going to be, Jeremy, I'm going to have 19 players to practice this year, where in the past you have 13 to 15. So it's going to be a lot of organization trying to keep people busy, keep them going. And it'll be hard to keep a lot of people happy, that's for sure. But we'll have to look at it and just weigh what we're going to do with some of these freshmen.
Well, Ray, Melanie, and Lee will certainly be busy. We look forward to that. And the next time we chat, I really hope you're on a horse. And then for the first time in BYU Sports Nation history, we can have a guest say, I'm on a horse.
And maybe we'll go do that. We'll go do Sports Nation on a horse. How's that?
Hey, that sounds great. Seriously, that sounds amazing. Juddy,
let's do it. Hey, I got him. It's up to you guys.
Let's go.
Put it in your corner now.
Okay, best of luck with summer workouts, and we'll see you at the GIRLDAD camp. Feels like it's just around the corner. It's about 2 months away, but it's coming up. And again, sign up for that. Jeff, we appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks. And hey, you better get in shape.
That's not going to happen.
All right. Hey, see you guys. Have a good day.
Jeff Judkins, who's trying to get me into shape unnecessarily on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline.
Saddle
Deseret
up.
First. You know why, we show how.